Yeah.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Welcome to our, actually it's our second meeting for the current calendar year. Although, as I noted, it was great to be with you folk 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we had the LTP workshop. That was tremendous. So welcome to the meeting. Welcome Ian online. Thank you that you've made yourself available as well. And somebody will keep a careful eye to make certain if you want to raise a question or come in, you will. And I think we've got one member of the public. Welcome as well. It's great to have you here too. We're often low on public, and I always appreciate the fact that somebody takes an interest. So thank you for being here as well. That's great. We are recording the meeting, obviously, as is normal, and you folk know better the health and safety, so I will be following you out the door, short of an earthquake, which I guess we rock very and hold this table, which looks like it's got an MBS rating of about 3%. Okay, let's start with the Carrick here, please. That would be great. Namo te moana. He hoara ki ranganei. Tato I tato kato. Thank you very much. So I think we've got a full muster, but are there any apologies? Let's just recognise Fran's got to go at just after, I think, 3. You said, Fran, potentially out for that. Otherwise, I think we're all here. So I will just move that we sustain an early release of Fran. Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Colin. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Can we go to then anything on the agenda you need to note your interests? No, probably surprised I was, but that's cool. Fran, is there any acknowledgements or tributes that we need to note at this meeting, or Jan, in that case, is there anything we need to note? No. Public participation, I haven't been informed of any desire to address the meeting, so there's no actions arising. No urgent business. Stefan, has been nothing we have to discuss outside of the meeting, the agenda? That's great. Okay, can we go then please to the minutes, which I'm going to move we take as true and correct. Rob, thank you. Any matters of correction or accuracy that we need to note? Like it was, looked like the meeting I was at, Amy, so I'm very happy with it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Very.
Apology.
Pardon?
I abstain. I was an apology for that meeting.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry, I wasn't going to ask for abstentions, but let's note that. Were you not there? Obviously you weren't. I didn't read my minutes that well. I thought I had. Okay. Can we then move into the substantive items, which is obviously the first one is sensitive expenditure, Charlie?
I'll take the as having been read and just summarise by saying this is a regular review of this policy. It was due up for this time as its normal review point, and it's mainly been adjusted to align with guidance from the Office of the Auditor General, which is now known as the Audit Office.
That's right.
They're combined with Audit New Zealand. So it's having sensibly, this policy is not necessarily saying that this expenditure is wrong or bad. It's just noting that it has more interest in this kind of expenditure than other expenditure can have. So that's why you call it sensitive. It's not a great word for it, but it's the word that we generally use. And I believe all of these amendments are sensible and, as I said, in line with the guidance from the Audit Office. Any questions?
Just get on.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Yeah, I read through. It's quite a comprehensive document or a policy. We're audited against that through Audit New Zealand, only not. This policy in terms of.
Yeah, absolutely. So they will look at the policy and what say we do in terms of approvals and reporting and things, and check that we are maintaining that.
That's great. Thanks, Charlie.
Rob, and then okay, you guys can work it out. You don't need the chair.
Reading through this and came across 7.3 meals and daily allowance of $150. I know it's
not going to be large sums of money, but that, by my reckoning, was quite high. My experience would be $100 was kind of low, 120 was kind of middle in ground, 130, 150.
You talk about in the guideline.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds stupid, I know, but it's sort of hit me when I read it. 10.3 page, 28.
Yeah, I mean,
It's good as hell. Well,
yeah, that is a should not exceed. A standard that wouldn't be anywhere near that. However, you need to allow for the fact that sometimes there might be and dinner that's gone to and that sort of thing, but happy to take guidance on that level. And
Right, could I suggest a compromise put after the inclusive of GST? Oh, let's face it, you're gonna have to pay GST. So if you make it inclusive of GST, it should be 120, roughly.
Yep.
Well, 3/23 times 150, good, pardon? 150 is 150, yeah. It's gonna be in there anyway.
it
You
helps
don't need it,
clarify whether
I mean, pardon?
it helps clarify whether it includes GST or not anyway, so that's a good point to make, but.
Yeah.
if you
make it
get-
inclusive GST, then to your point, yeah.
Okay, that does raise the question, oh, sorry, Rob, you called.
I just commented some questions. So just on the comment, this seems fairly standard to me, particularly in comparison to other policies I've seen from other government departments. It highlights the areas that the public tend to focus on around sensitive expenditure for that, which ends up in the front page of a newspaper and goes wrong for you. I just have, and my questions in relation to Christmas functions, do you have any additional guidelines in terms of how, what you provide in that context? That's always something that can come up. And then I see that you've also covered off international travel, but I'd be would ask the question, what does officers of the council do any international travel? And the third question is, just the policy around when there's not a receipt produced in the area of just, yeah.
So I'll take those in order. So Christmas function is included, mentioned on the staff recognition occasions. We are incredibly parsimonious, conservative, whatever you want to call it, in terms of our Christmas function. The amount has not increased in the 6 years that I've been here. And
The miserable.
I believe that our council has, our officers have the right approach to that. It's a recognition of the staff and their hard work, but in my mind, it wouldn't be anything that raised an eyebrow in the journalist's sort of everyday work. In terms of the next one was international travel. Yeah. It's again, hasn't happened very much at all in the time that I've been here, but we do need to recognise that increasingly local government in Australia and New Zealand are very closely tied and aligned. And it is possible that officers would go to probably more likely Australia than anywhere else. As part of professional events or development. And it would, as I say, it's not likely to happen, but it's possible to happen. So you would need to include that in here. And apologies, what was the?
The other one is just policy when a receipt is not produced for an area of sensitive expenditure.
Yeah. So we have this as a part of our general, in terms of claiming expenses anyway, is that some other form of proof of a purchase. So something like a screenshot of a line from a debit statement or a bank statement would be preferable. But we also just ask people to go back and see if they can get a receipt, which normally these days most businesses are using electronic systems at one sale anyway. So it would be very rare.
I think you have to go on the basis of reasonable trial. I mean, as a person who travels a lot, you can't always get a receipt out of a parking meter these days. For instance, it can be quite difficult. So Colin, you got a question?
Very sorry, just had one, because the policy itself is really geared up for a lot of staff and very little in terms of governance or information working through from a councillor's perspective or whatever. And one of the things I'm really conscious of is that often people will leave local government for whatever reason, not elected. And it's often nice to acknowledge their service to their community through this forum, through council itself. And I didn't see anything in the policy that allowed for that to happen. There's not a lot of discretion there in terms of what the CEO can do and what they can't do. So I just wondered whether or not something of that nature could be incorporated at some stage in the policy. Charlie, I'd be keen on that.
So I suppose I would suggest to put that in here. We, in the 8.1 section about recognising staff achievements and occasions, perhaps we could change that to staff and elected members. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be wise, because actually, if you go back to page 21 of the agenda, the scope of this is for staff and elected members and appointed members. So this is actually embrace of everybody. This is not just staff that we're dealing with, that we're dealing with here. Yeah.
I'll go through the document and make that consistent where it mentions.
Thank you. I think it's. And just remind me the reporting, we're going to get you said 6 months, you're going to get a report back over the exercise of, well, I guess we're going to report on sensitive expenditure, full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the guidelines highlights the fact that you can have every single transaction going through the right process. But unless you take a step back and look at it cumulatively,
That's right.
you're not really fulfilling the governance side of that thing. So the intention, and I don't see why this can't happen, is to provide a trend analysis. We're not looking to provide a line by line analysis, but trends in sensitive expenditure. I was thinking along the lines of type of expenditure and perhaps which area of the business that's occurring.
So it becomes a question for us, because you will be going through the normal approval processes. And I expect in other ways you'd tell us if an approval hadn't been done appropriately. It's actually, as you say, it's about the reasonableness of the nature of the spend. Look at it, an example, it will remain nameless, but I had a mayor that on good justifiable business reasons seemed to have a lot of breakfast meetings with people that were important, and it was relevant. Each one I could justify. But when I looked at it, because I have to sign off the mayor's thing, I could see that actually, you know, if I chose to look at it in a negative way, we were buying his breakfast every second day. And you start to say, so is that reasonable? Which is really where it's our chance just to say, hey, have we got perspective right on this? Okay, that's fair enough. So it's a case of this is a good baseline to do it. We've got the backstop of this being consistent with the audit office, and now we got that chance to see it going forward. The only thing that I had perhaps mentioned, Charlie, before was the idea some councils would have, dare I say, a level of more specificity, but they would sit in guidance. So actually, how much would we pay for? Or sorry, I should be careful with your guidelines. Guidelines for how much would be paid for, say, Koha, or gifted for Koha, or gifts for retirement. You know, differences often between, say, staff of 10 years versus a staff of 40 years. Now, we don't have to go there, I think, at this stage, but if there's any problem in interpreting or anything like that, we should probably consider that in the future as a possibility without trying to tie ourselves up in bureaucratic knots. I think, by the way, the other thing which is really important from this, and Rob, you've hinted at the front page test, but the test is really good as you put it here, Charlie, in the first bullet point of the executive summary on page 15. This is sensitive because it can be perceived that there is personal benefit. And I think that's the thing we're trying to make certain here, is that we deal to that perception rather than anything else. That's why things like credit cards get in here as well, which is the way of transacting business, but they can be perceived as personal benefit and abuse. Okay, I think we're there, are we, guys? Thank you, appreciate that. So the resolution as we receive, recommend, And we note, do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Thanks, Boz. Thank you, Collier. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes, it's carried. Thank you. Right, financial report, please. Nick is on the line. Welcome, Nick. Welcome to the meeting.
Hi there.
We'll get to you, Nick. You give us half of it, we can hear you, which is even better. Just if you could just hold the fire, we'll deal with the finance report first. And then if
Certainly.
you could introduce and deal with the treasury report, that'd be great. Thank you, Charlie. In your hands.
Perfect. So again, take this report and the attachment is read, but the highlight sort of headline really is that we're tracking mostly along with budget in terms of the revenue and expense. Borrowings have increased ever so slightly now as at April, although you haven't been looking at the March
Yeah.
report. Yeah. And rates arrears are sitting at 4.1% of annual rates.
Mm.
I would have questions on.
On the finances at the moment, we'll come back to what is, boss?
I was just on that, the rates increase, see at 1.3, obviously it's a big increase on last year as well. Are we reaching out to these people and saying, are you in trouble? Like we were talking before, often they don't let us know they're struggling.
Yeah, it is
We-
difficult with the resource we've got available in council to proactively
Mm.
reach out to people. We are aiming to reduce a lot of manual work in that team, in that area, so that they can spend more of their time on more valuable outreach.
Yeah, okay.
There's also an element, I think this is particularly in a community like ourselves, of people not wanting to speak out about their struggles. And we can't tell by the fact that someone is behind or not, or even not paying at all on their rates, the reason why, until they reach out to us. It may be that they are reluctant to pay their rates for political reasons. It may be that they forgot, or it may be that they are struggling. But whenever we do speak to people, we are proactive in offering them multiple ways of paying their rates and the opportunity to spread that over time, including where appropriate, spreading that beyond the end of the rating year, although obviously that does not help them keep with. I am favourable and looking forward to seeing the ratepayer assistance scheme come into effect, which has been proposed by LGFA. And as I said, I don't think that's going to be in for this current rating year coming, but future years, I'm hoping that that will help our ratepayers to spread the burden of their rates against their property. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Bruce.
I think, Boz, there is a modest role for elected members to encourage to talk with Charlie and the team, because I think it's to dispel the fear that, you know, you're going to refresh them or something like that, but actually you've got some ways to help and assist. I think
Absolutely.
it's actually a really,
That's
that would be a great message if, you know, probably quietly put to your constituents could be said. Yes.
We are we are seeing growth and
Yeah.
it's the wrong year to see growth in, you know.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks, Bruce. Charlie, just, is this a general trend across districts of our size as city and?
It's a trend across the country.
It is.
Yes, the rate side is increasing here.
Yeah.
In fact, 4.1% is relatively low.
Yeah. I thought 2.1% was okay. But I mean, there's interesting stuff out today, Colin, from, who is it, Dot Watcher, former mayor of Wellington, has done a survey. Justin Leston done a survey which shows our rural population is spending, 25% of their income on petrol, on fuel, as in contrast to 5% in an urban environment. So, it's not that, this is another thing to think through. It's not necessarily because Boz the level of rates, although that, we can argue the toss on that one. But it's actually the costs elsewhere that are starting to now crimp in on family budgets. So that is a challenge there too. Okay.
Plus you've got industries that are starting to fail now, like you've got Spay, you've got
That's right.
fruit still on the vine,
Yeah.
you've got industry shutting, the fruit processing, the craft lines pulling out.
So it is difficult. Anything else on the finances before we get treasury? Yes, Rob?
Just a minor question, because it was a significant piece of expenditure. On page 43, Martinborough Corporate Office. So the actuals are 1.5 million. Given it's being now completed, has everything been brought to charge there?
There may be minor snag work that we might get invoiced for, I'm not sure, but.
So there should be quite a bit
Relatively,
on the budget,
Completely, yes.
quite good
And that,
under.
yes, and that corporate office includes the annual repairs and maintenance. So if there's anything outside of the corporate office that needs repairing there, that may come in, but substantively that line is now spent.
Thanks.
So I think Rob was also going to say, so the good news is it's coming under budget.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're after there, Rob. Perhaps we should trumpet that. It's coming under budget. Try to say it louder. Okay, that's great news.
Is there a way that we can do a bit of a campaign on the direct debits again? Because that's a really,
We can, but the system that I mentioned earlier, that we're potentially looking at is related to direct debits.
Oh.
And is actually a more customer friendly way of doing direct debits. So we wouldn't want to do a campaign to get more people onto our manual direct debits and then another campaign to get them onto this new system. So we are looking, we do all the time off the direct debits. Yeah.
what's the time frame on the new system?
We are looking to introduce that after instalment 1 of 26/7, so roughly August, September. But that is subject to us completing and a review of the contract and actually signing the contract on that. So we will see.
Right.
Yeah, if we don't end up going with that service, then absolutely we'll do another direct debit campaign. Yeah. We just wouldn't want to do one and then have a different. Yeah.
Understand. Cool.
I was reasonably comfortable with the financials, but I think you said, or might have been James said, the 47% capital achievement is going to go up substantially before the end of the year, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So substantively the first part of this year in terms of the waters projects was in terms of getting tenders and engaging contractors. Now that work is largely underway and the spend will keep increasing there, and we're aiming for a much higher percentage spend.
We use that number. You gave me a number. Am I allowed to say it publicly?
Calculate what's at the bottom of the table. It's 90%.
90%.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good sign. Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, if you achieve that, well done, guys.
That would be amazing.
Seriously,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I've got no reason to believe that you won't. Okay. And there's some, positive results there about even with some reduced revenue, you've got control of costs, which is going to bring us in with a forecast favourable result versus budget. If I read my maths right. No, I'm sorry, just on it. You're going to maintain it. Sorry, you're just slightly under, but you're going to maintain it. My mistake. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay. Anything else then on the financials before we look at the Treasury report? So look, Charlie, in your hands, and then I'll remain Nick, please, just about that brief view on the Treasury report. Obviously, the key feature I've asked you to focus on is our undershoot in terms of the green on the grey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the report that you've got is as at 31 March. And as you'll note, we had some loans maturing this month in April. In line with our plans that we came to council and asked for permission to go outside of that policy, we have rolled those loans, which means we've retaken out those loans on a short term to July. And in July, we'll be planning to do the same thing again, but adding in anything that we need for the capital program again. So we increased our loans in April by 6 million, and that was all down to the Waters capital program. So the flip side of increasing your capital program is that you increase your borrowing for it, which is as per the plan. So we worked very closely with Banthorpe, with Nick and Earl on checking that we have those timings and the interest rates at the right level. But I'll perhaps pass over to Nick to just make a comment on that strategy.
Thank you. Welcome to the meeting, Nick.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here, man.
Thank you. And yeah, apologies, Earl couldn't make it today, but I'll be sitting in for him. Would you like me to share those slides now? Or is that,
Yes.
or just making a, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just bring that up. On your screens now?
We have got it now. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, Matt, very much.
Okay. Yes, so as discussed, I have actually rolled the forward 1 month till 30th of April for this slide, just showing that fixed rate portion has been rolled sort of a 3 month period to July. Now, drawn debt, as discussed, has increased to 34.5 million during the month, and that's to do with the infrastructure program and the water assets. Now, my understanding is approval has been given to act outside of the policy limits at this stage, and that is because the water debt will be transferred probably around June or July 2027, along with any hedging related to those water assets. So that will bring down your debt levels significantly from the council perspective, and therefore less hedging would be required from that time frame. So these are the latest LGFA loans, the existing longer term 6.7 million borrowing through to May 31, as well as the two relatively short term loans, which we also recommend to roll over for short periods up until the date that debt is transferred to the water entity. So the weighted average cost of debt has decreased since last meeting, and that's because the shape of the yield curve, or the short-term interest rates at the moment, are significantly lower than longer-term interest rates. So moving off some of the longer-term borrowing over the month and borrowing more at the shorter-term rates has meant that the average weighted average cost of debt has come down. Just from a general overall outlook in terms of interest rates, the RBNZ did keep the OCR steady at 2.25% early last month. It is due to have its monetary policy statement released at the end of this month, I think the 27th of May. There isn't an expectation yet that there will be a hike, but hikes are priced into interest rate markets, and that's to do with the inflation story that's largely to do with the Iran war and the increase in costs of things like fuel, fertilizer, and then the secondary round effects which go into food prices and the like. So there will be, the RBNZ has sort of made it clear that it is prepared to act if needed, and probably not on those initial first round effects of fuel prices going up, but if that then sends through signals to pushing up other prices, and particularly if is a wage push inflation where employees are trying to negotiate higher wages from their employers, and then that increases their ability to pay higher inflation basically. So so that, if I go on to the next slide,
what that looks like is the market pricing. We're currently down here at 2.25%, but the market is now pricing 5 rate hikes over the next 12 months to take it back to around 3.5%. We think that market is ahead of itself. And if I, well, just quickly, the Australian interest rates that are in green, and you can see that they've already hiked their cash rate 3 times, but that was more to do with their underlying inflation pressures before the Middle East war. They were already facing a much higher inflation rate than us here, and had quite a lot of pressures on things like house prices and rent, and wage inflation around 4%. It's quite a different story here. And when we look at what the domestic banks here in New Zealand are looking at in terms of the rate hiking cycle, you can see that there's 2 quite different paths that the economists at the banks here are picking. So both ANZ and ASB think that there will be rate hikes over the next sort of 6 months to the end of this year, to take it back to around that 3% or 3.25%. But their view is that will be enough to pull back demand enough in the economy that inflation will settle and potentially come back down by that stage. But when we look at what Westpac and BNZ are picking is significantly higher and longer rate hiking cycle to take the cash rate back to 4 to 4.5%. Now our view is that we're more aligned with the ANZ and ASB side of the market. We've entered into this period of high fuel prices in probably a bit of a precarious situation, where GDP growth was actually starting to slow down in the 4th quarter of last year. We had unemployment at probably relatively high levels from a historical perspective, and just in general, households are under pressure still from this cost of living situation. But then that was before the cost of fuel. So that, in our view, we don't think that the Reserve Bank will need to hike the cash rate very much before that really does put pressure on demand in the economy. And taking that into consideration, this is the Reserve Bank's view on the neutral OCR, and that's where they think they're not stimulating the economy and they're not slowing the economy down. And the red line is that long-term view of what that neutral rate is, and that's around that 3%. So we don't think the Reserve Bank should really be going, because at 2.25% now, it is effectively stimulating the economy because the rates are lower than that neutral rate. But we think even if the Reserve Bank got back to that sort of 3% level or that neutral, it will cause the economy to it won't be stimulating the economy anymore. Potentially, when we go back to Westpac and BNZ, their view is the neutral rate is higher. It's more around that 3.5% to 4%, and that's why they're saying that the OCR needs to go back to that sort of level. Overall, bond yields. We've seen this big pickup in longer term interest rates that governments and councils are having to borrow at. That's a lot of that's happened since March. We saw that big spike up as markets became nervous and the cost to borrowing increased. Even just overnight, we saw another bounce higher, and those US long-term yields, which pretty much what Australia and New Zealand are based off in the background, those US 10-year bond yields and sort of reached their highest level for coming up a year now. So there is pressure on those longer term yields, and that's what's flowing through to longer term swap rates in New Zealand as well as New Zealand being impacted by Australia, which has had this inflation issue, and their long-term government bond yields have moved up significantly. So we've been caught up in the middle of that as well. So that's causing that really steep yield curve, and therefore to manage risk long-term has become more expensive. And so, yeah, this is just swap rates. This is the underlying wholesale interest rates in New Zealand. So at the moment, you can currently borrow for 3 months at 2.6%. That's the 90-day bank bill rate, before any margin, of course. And then, but to hedge for say 3 years, that's at 3.73, and then 5 and 7 years are around that 4% level. So there is quite a big steep curve at the moment, and that's why we're suggesting that mainly looking at short terms, particularly because this water debt will come off the balance sheet in time, and we're waiting for some of these rates to ease off if those expectations prove to be higher than what the market expectations are too high, and comes back to more that 3.5 sort of area. Okay, that's the main. If there are more slides here to go on around the economy, but has that sort of answered your questions around strategy?
Yeah, I think so, but have we got any questions from around the room on that?
All very interesting.
Yeah.
So we'd be reflecting that we're short term, which has some inherent risks that we are subject to the market. But the anticipation here, Nick, is that it's not going to move substantially, that we can manage that. And you'd be looking for the swap rate to come down before you took a longer term position in the market.
Absolutely.
Plus also the correction with the debt going off.
The debt going off the books. If it was any other debt we had on there and we weren't expecting it to be transferred to another organisation, then we'd be looking at those longer term borrowings. But luckily we're in the position that in 14 months-ish time that debt will transition. And yeah.
Remind me how much goes to the company at this stage based on our current book?
We're just doing those recalculations as part of the annual plan.
Yeah.
But
Rough idea.
just quickly go back. Sorry, I'll just
So
go.
we're at 34.5 at the moment. So
I thought.
34.5 is the April, yeah. And where are we? So 21, 20. Of the 29.7 mil that we had at the end of March, 25 of that was related to water and wastewater, and so all of that 6 million that we just borrowed was wastewater and water.
So definitely change it substantially.
Exactly, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So any other questions, folk, that we need to know? So it is be monitored regularly, but
Very closely. And
very closely. But at this stage, we're comfortable that is the position that we're in. We'll have to pass a motion on that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Nick. That's very, very helpful.
Thanks very much.
I do appreciate that, and nice to meet you. And instead of that's great. Thank you.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
So the other thing I just wanted to check there was Earl's statement that we had, because I think the 30 million was under our treasury policy, the sort of the magic number gave a lot of discretion, well, gave appropriate discretion to Janice. We're now over the 30, but the previous resolution is sufficient to carry this now that we're over $30 million, right?
Absolutely, and the resolution included that we would come back to this committee and council if the situation with interest rates substantially changes. So,
yep. Okay, good. So we're still under that, so we don't have to actually pass a particular resolution at this meeting, because we effectively have an existing resolution on the books which protects you and me from the fact that we've made a decision about this outside of our planned treasury policy. Okay. Final chance. Any other questions before I go to the resolution? There being none, can we go to the resolutions, which is that we received the finance report. Oh, do I have to deal with it? Sorry, is tax a separate item? No, it's not.
Report.
Sorry, it is a separate report.
2.2.
It sort of seems odd that we've got the tax report coming as well, but let's take it. And I've read the tax report. There are no significant tax risk or breaches at this stage. I'm going to move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Appreciate that, Bos. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So we will deal with the tax update now, please.
Thank you. And the main reason I've done this as a separate report is because there was a review done of our taxes by PwC towards the end of the last financial year. And because of the change in elected members, this is the first time I've brought this to the committee. Headline essentially is we are complying. But the recommendation from PwC is to put more process and procedures around that, because we're very much reliant on the quality of our staff and the work that they do to go into making us compliant. So we could be making things easier on ourselves is effectively what they said. Yeah. Any questions on this report?
Oh, yeah. I just intrigued if you had a similar report before, because it's exactly.
Not in the time that I've been here.
No,
In fact, I would thank Janice.
Yeah, do you think that might?
Janice is the one that really prompted this one.
Yeah, I was wondering what probably.
It's very logical. The answer was logical. I just thought,
It's logical that through time we would do this, we would have this external review, and PW are probably the accepted experts, particularly in this area in local government. Yes, Rob.
But just on the points that were noted in the report, relevant to relying on manual processes, judgments and the experience of staff, and then the IRD's expectations that more effort, the focus needs to be put on governance. So what's actually your next step in meeting those actual recommendations and points noted?
Absolutely. So the team are currently working on simple processes that we can follow. For example, every time we either buy or sell land related to council business, we look at the guidance from Inland Revenue and make an assessment based on those individual circumstances. We could make it a heck of a lot easier on ourselves if we have a flowchart that says, is the vendor or purchaser GST registered? Yes, no, sort of thing. So that's the kind of process that we go through in the team every time, but we could absolutely make that easier for ourselves. So we will be looking at where are the areas that have the most risk in compliance and focusing on those first.
So just further to Rob's question, do you have a time frame for that?
We would hope that would happen in the next 12 months.
Okay.
I'm relying on, I've just had to recruit a new finance team lead, so we'll help if that role is filled soon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Charles.
Brilliant. Anything else, folks?
Yeah, a little bit
So it is. I mean, I think we need to reflect. There are no, I mean, they've done a review and it's been an intensive review and we've got our tax returns right. So that's actually a good sign. So well done, Charlie.
Lots of greens.
I absolutely agree, but we do have this heightened risk without it being dramatic over a normal situation where we don't. Charlie, you leave tomorrow for some reason. We are at risk because it's capability that holds it in their heads rather than it's being systemized. So, look, perhaps it would be good in 6 months' time if we could just get a sense, have you been able to act and deliver on the third resolution that's being proposed here, which is that you will have a process in place to get the stuff down. So perhaps at the end of the year, we might just want to know that you are on track, please. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, Brent, I won't put that down as a resolution, but I think it's suffice to say we received the report. We reviewed, we note that the review identified no breaches or material tax compliance issues, and that you've got a process in place. We'll hear about that in 6 months' time. We'll have a seconder. Thank you, Collier. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, it's carried. Thank you. Rightio, moving along on to always You can never get far from Amy's teaching. She has me down to, anyway, the LTP indicators, in other words, our planned performance for our community under the LTP and the results against it. Stefan, are you leading us off on this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. This, I'll take this as read. We are happy to say that the quality of the reporting that we've been able to provide you is certainly improved and improving. So you're seeing a lot more information better presented, and that's a testimony to really Nikki Ansell's work with the team to improve our systems and to work with the teams to produce this information for you. But it's an ongoing piece of work. As you know, we've streamlined the KPIs to 42. They were over 100, and there's probably more work to make them more efficient. And we're in a good position. I think as we move towards the annual report, which is where all of this ends up, after 3 quarters, the position is good. We're already achieving 31. We're concentrating hard on the ones where we're not achieving, and looking for further improvements as we head towards the end of the year. But happy to answer any questions on the report, and Nikki's here to help if there's any detail that we.
Thank you, Nikki. There's nothing you want to say at all, Nikki, before we raise questions? You're very welcome to come to the table.
I think this is, I guess, a piece of continuous improvement for us, and is here today as part of that work to provide oversight to the committee. No, otherwise, Stefan said it all. I'm happy to answer any questions through you.
Thank you, Nikki. Colin.
Yeah, I would just want to compliment the team for a good comprehensive report. If I was a member of our community looking at the agendas for our Audit and Risk Committee and reading some of the results and broken down in the format we've actually used, man, it spells out a nice clear picture, and yeah, I'm delighted to be able to read that through. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Rob?
Comment first. Stefan, I think probably I'd agree that I'd continue to focus on KPIs for too many still. I think some of them sit nicely within a long-term plan context, and there are others I would suggest might sit on the periphery and are more related to, I'm not too sure, the couple here afterwards that are actually out of the council's hands and even out of what I would expect to see in a long-term plan. But there might be a good reason for that. There might be a statutory reason why you have to have some things in there. But anyway, that's just a general comment. So I commend you on that work to do with that. Just on the data itself, I did note that you have a target rate set with it, somewhere between 10, 90% or 100%. And then on, say, on the first 2 quarters, quarter 1 and quarter 2, you have just the 1%, which indicates that's above the target. But is that, I'll give you an example. So the average quality of ride on the sealed local road network, your target is 90%. But for quarter 1 and quarter 2, you have it registered as 97.75. So am I to take it that it's consistent across those 2 quarters at 97, or could it even be half of that, 97 in total?
So yeah, so through you, Chair, I have to answer that question. That is 97.5% as of those 2 quarters. That is total take. That was part of the work that we're doing. Is traditionally this has been an annual piece of work. So once a year we've reported these stats, and so moving forward, this is the first year where we're trying to get the results out each quarter. Some of that is still just in a process of improvement. And so you'll see that 97.75% is as of the 31st of December. We don't have it related to quarter 1 and quarter 2. It is just for both combined, and there will be a variety of reasons for that. Yeah.
And Chair, if members have a question on any of these measures, please feel free to
fire it through to us, and we certainly would be very interested in any measures that you think could be taken out of the equation, and that could form part of our conversation in the forthcoming LCP. So we're all for simplification and efficiency in relation to our performance measures.
And is there, with the Antenna app, you've got people can do reporting in through the different divisions. Is there a way that we could understand sort of the flow of, because it'd be interesting, the intensity of people targeting certain specific areas through Antenna would be quite a nice data point.
As a performance measure, Councillor?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it gives Antenna is kind of how we're talking.
There are some statutory measures here, the ones that are required. Rob, you mentioned, some of these, there's actually quite a number that are required by the Department of Internal Affairs. They tend to relate to the 3 waters. And some of those are actually effectively come through your complaint system. So it's things like how quickly the number of complaints per connection, or thousands of connections, whatever it is, was the number. You can see it there on, what page am I on? Page 99, etc. You can see those, which I presume come through Antenna. You've got those sorts of responses. You've got that insight into the nature of complaints that could become, or requests for service in effect coming in. But I agree, this won't show everything that comes in through Antenna, at least not in some of this stuff here. It might be something that would be of interest to see, actually. I mean, I want to say, Chris, I think you're probably quite right in the long run. Our RFS system, A is one we rely on, B is one which gives us a sense of actually what is the received level of service before we can take it that the complaints are a sign of non-service.
Chair, I'm conscious there might be a question behind me, but just before we go to that, I'll make a comment on Antenna. We're at the moment consolidating the whole system by which we manage customer inquiry and including complaints and requests for service through the Zendesk system, and that will give us a single point of truth in terms of request for service, customer inquiry, and the resolution of those inquiries. We at the moment gather information on customer inquiry through a variety of sources, including Antenna.
Okay.
And so that will help us compile these data points. But that is changing as we bring Zendesk into play.
I'll read out the question.
Yes, sorry, has Fran got a question through?
Oh, no, it's from Councillor Clark, who's joined us.
Oh, okay.
In fact, not a member of the committee. So the question was good question. Summary of Antenna reporting would be most useful. Maybe you should sit under the infrastructure committee, broken down into subsets. So.
Okay, that's endorsement of that idea. Okay. Any other questions in terms of performance? Being none, let's go to the resolution, please, which is that we received the report. Seems always a bit, sorry, Nikki, that always seems a wee bit short on your good work. So it's important that you do this, but we're all we're doing is receiving. So let's take it on board. Thank you, Rob. Do I have a second? Thank you, Colin. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. Thank you. Stefan, the risk report, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's not a lot to report here. We have had recently a good session with councillors in April on risk, where we looked at risk appetite and also insurance. That was very useful for us as we continue to examine our strategic and operational risks. There isn't major change in the overall risk profile, as we see from the report. One area where we did make an adjustment was in emergency management, and that just reflects the frequency of events that we're experiencing, and the scale and the impact of that on the business, particularly on our infrastructure assets, but also on the staff required to respond and recover. Otherwise, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Stephen, I was just having a discussion prior to the meeting. There is a bit here that we want to do to pick up our committee's work around strategic risk. One is we do need to complete the exercise around risk appetite, because the reporting's great, but we're missing that other column, which would come on the right hand. If you're looking at page, say 105, the right hand, what's actually our appetite? And we don't, we haven't quite got that aligned, which is not a problem. That's all good development, because then it gives us a chance to probably have even what might be called a deeper dive into some of these risks, which would be helpful. So with that, and knowing that's the case, I'm not complaining. That's just where we're at. We're developing well, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you guys about risk edit. Do we have questions at this stage, Stefan? James knows I've got a couple for him. Shall I start with that, James? I was interested in a couple. One was so I'm interested actually in the residual risk rating, and the two that, for whatever reason, attracted me were the water interim transitional OPEX risk, which is sitting at high, and also the critical asset failure risk, which is sitting at high. When I went to the sort of the first lot of summary pages we had, and I'm looking here at gee whiz, 11 is on page 111, I think, with a bit of luck. No, 112. I looked at the description, and I think I might be looking at dated descriptions, or at least 2 weeks out of date, James. So can I have greater confidence that the transition risk is actually coming down?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies, that hasn't been updated.
I understand that, mate. It's not they're not looking you over that, Colin.
Yeah.
It's all good.
We have, it's public, we've appointed City Care Water to be the service delivery provider there, so that will be updated and come down. That's for SR 11. For OR2 around assets, we still believe there's quite high risk there, particularly with water. Once water goes to the new entity, that may come down slightly. Still have reasonable risk there with our roading infrastructure as well. So I believe OR2 is more a standard kind of risk in terms of the state of our assets at the moment.
Right, if I can just reinterpret with SR11, I mean, what interests me was that it seemed like we were doing good work. We needed to, but it seemed like more time was being taken around contract negotiations, etc. Those have concluded, haven't they?
Correct.
We don't know the commercial arrangements in open, but in effect, you've got this in play now, which presumably must bring the level of residual risk down. Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which again is just coming back to a matter of timing, and I appreciate that. I'm not, as I say, any particular concern over that. With the critical risk, you're saying that we have got an ongoing, well, actually two things, wasn't it? To some extent, we hive water off to somebody else, although our ratepayers, who are the consumers, will still bear that risk, and I want to be conscious of that. But it does become literally the responsibility of another entity, so I get that. When I looked at the detail behind it, it seemed to me that the likelihood of critical risk failure remains relatively high. Am I right in saying that?
I think currently, particularly with water,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
They change slightly once water's gone. Roading probably in terms of how the likelihood and how quickly that risk could become an issue would be a lot different.
Are you able to describe to me for roading what would be the nature of the failure that could be possible? Is it a bridge going out through a flood, or is it that we don't maintain our roads and the road roughness is good at the moment? We're at 97.5%.
Yeah.
Is that going to go down? What is it that you count as asset failure?
It'd be predominantly related to emergency events, through, like you've mentioned, bridge failure or slips or slumps, things like that, as opposed to something just failing without anything else sort of driving it. We've talked about a lot, and we're particularly with our bridge infrastructure, it's incredibly aged. We don't believe there's anything there with immediate failure. Failures would revolve around weather events.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Well, that's probably appropriate, given the number I saw somewhere else there, Stephen, to say that it's highly likely. or rather the likelihood in terms of that compared to consequences is always going to be high. Okay, that's given me a sense of why that remains red at this point in time. A, we've got water in for another year, 14 months, and B, we've still got roads. Yeah, Con?
I want to just capture a little bit of what James was saying there, because he raised the risk factor in terms of an emergency, some restriction or a bridge failure and that. So you can assure us that there's nothing in there, for instance, where we haven't provided a service level that would advance a catastrophic failure on the road, like clearing out of drainage, for instance, that could mitigate that. You don't see that as an issue at all. You think really this is just based around an event.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it would be that clear.
You. Thanks, Sir James. Those are my two questions out of this. We've other folk got questions around our risk profile. I haven't. I did wonder whether, and I'm not proposing we have one today at all. I think, given the events of last week and Head Start, I think we're all trying to grip up on where that really gets to. So, and I suspect probably at our next meeting, Stefan, that would be something that might be logical for us to be talking through as a risk environment. But that broader government reform clearly is an outstanding, one that we still need to grip up on. But I suspect that's part of the reason Fran's sitting over in Wellington is the meetings they'll have in the coming 2 days will start to crystallise some of that. So Rob, I think you might have
just a question about Lagoima, noting that there are 2 areas of increase for that. So from a policy perspective, once you release a request, are you then publishing it on your website? And then any terms of any similar request, just reference the website as opposed to answering the Lagoima.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor. We have a proactive release policy that sees responses published to avoid repetitive requests.
Not every response.
Not every response we make, but
Select
ones that we judge would be likely to be asked again by.
Such as Lagoima.
Does save a proactive release policy does save us a lot of time if it's done right, and we do have one in place.
Yeah, there's just been one about the dog pound, and we did a big proactive release around the dog pound in 2024. So it's great to just be able to go back to that and say a lot of the information you want is going to be there.
Thanks, Rob. Any other questions? Yeah, Chris.
Just in respect to the asset failure, it's kind of like a very broad high risk category. Is there a reason why we don't just say, well, it's this item, and this item are our 3 key obvious risks, so that we sort of have a bit more focus on those things?
Sorry, I must have looked like I was about to answer that. I don't know whether actually you want to answer that, Stephen.
Councillor, this is the overarching risk to all of our asset classes and relates to the failure across a whole lot of different asset classes. If you wanted to get information on individual assets within a class, you'd look at the asset management plans that relate to that class. So, for example, if you were wanting to get an understanding of where the risk was in roading, you'd read the 3-year land transport plan, asset management plan, and that would give you probably as much granular information as you could get across the roading assets, including bridges. So that information is contained separately in asset management documents that we hold, which of course you're welcome to access.
I think at this stage this comes back to, because I was alluding to, there's another couple of steps I think we need to bring into our committee's program. One is risk appetite. So this is my so-called other column that we need to have here. And that's completing the sort of exercise we started with the LTP. Remember, we had the protective, conservative, balanced, blah, blah, blah. We need to do that. And then I think the other thing we need to do better what we could do, which would help us, I think, is probably getting to some of your questions, would be what is called a deep dive progressively through these strategic risks. So if we did asset failure, it would be very logical that perhaps with a James or equivalent, we would have perhaps a chance for, say, a 20-minute session on actually what is the further nature of understanding why that is a risk where we're at, and are we happy we are where we are.
And I think the chair,
There's probably more there than we could have, certainly more we could unpack, and we should unpack as a committee.
An A4 sheet and read that we would go by for appetite for risk. Yeah, we're going to get some of those laminated so that we could.
Oh, that's what I was suggesting, but anyway, don't worry.
I think that's, yeah, I think, yes, but.
Good.
Would not some of that just fall under the remit of the infrastructure committee?
Yes and no. I mean, we need to be careful here. I need to be careful here, sorry, in my leading of the committee boss. We have to be concerned about the overall risk profile we face as a council. I mean, this is our chance to bring everything together, and there are aspects here which will be dealt with by even full council, let alone the finance. So we need to keep an overview and a monitoring eye. We shouldn't be doing the work of the infrastructure.
and Chair, I think, I don't want to put words in Councillor Archer's mouth, but what I was hearing perhaps was that the risk is described in such a broad, overarching manner to be a little bit not unhelpful or not useful. So the risk, the failure of any major asset anywhere, sort of thing. So there is a line to be drawn between having a very, very long list of strategic risks and overarching head of risks. So if there's anything we can do to define them better, or you think that they're just not quite sharp enough, let us know and we'll have a look at it.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks for the question, Chris. Good one. Any other questions or comments at this point? Being none, let's go to the resolution, which is that we receive the report and that we note the information since it, which also includes, thank you, Rob, they looked at the Lagoima and privacy information that was sitting at the back. I'll move that from the chair to over seconder. Thank you, Rob. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Yes, it's carried. Thank you. So we are up to the people report, please, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, can you remind me of the page number?
147.
On behalf of May, I'll just make a couple of comments on the report which I think is read. There's not a lot here to report. Some good news is that recruitment is going well. We've managed to fill some specialist roles that have been vacant for some time, which has brought some relief to the teams. We've been looking, while we've been recruiting, we've been looking at potential shared arrangements where we can with other councils in the region, Carston and Masterton. We have had some success in the area. One is where we use a building inspector from Carston to work with us a couple of days a week in a shared arrangement. We'll be trying to do more of that where we can to be more efficient, bring some consistency across the different councils' approach. There's lots of benefits to doing that, as you know. And also leave liabilities has come down, and we're focused on managing leave liability because it's quite a drain on the books if it gets too high. But otherwise, happy to take questions from next committee meeting. You'll see some changes in the way we're reporting this stuff as we reflect changes in the staffing responsibilities. So we've split out health and safety, and now that sits under people, and you'll see health and safety reported under people and emergency management being a separate report. But you can look forward to that for next time.
Questions? Seems like one of detail. I'm always interested in and appreciate that we disclose the primary reason for exit. A location is there. Does that mean people find a job in this case, probably primarily Martinborough, being what? Not the right, when you say location, what does that mean? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I took it from that to be the tyranny of distance,
Okay.
and that doesn't mean just attracting folk from Wellington, where the largest pools of
Yeah.
capability are, of course, but also even travelling from Masterton in this day and age with
Yeah.
the cost of
Yeah.
gas the way it is, Chair,
Yeah,
can be prohibitive for people.
yeah. So it is an effect tyranny of distance. Okay. Yeah, as in contrast to living here. Right, gotcha. Okay, any other questions for Stephen?
Can I just ask a question in relation to headcount? So data as it's sort of here doesn't really give me a fuller picture in the context of what's the actual number of positions council has on its books by its budget, and how does this data relate to that?
Thank you, councillor. My understanding, and I may have to take it back if I don't give you a full answer, but my understanding is that we've baselined 77 full-time equivalent roles, budgeted for those roles, but that our headcount, taking account of shared roles and part-time roles, and the different ways we employ people, is 88.
Yeah, but if I added all that up, the total FTE equivalent should be 77, is that correct?
That's what I'm hearing. The budget is 77.49.
Yeah,
Correct. That's what we budgeted on some of them.
yeah, okay.
Part of
Just
the
from
budget.
a transparency perspective, it might be useful at some point to have that figure noted. And
Which figure, sorry?
the 77,
Oh, it's in the graph. It's on the graph.
It's on the graph.
top.
It's on the top of the graph.
Full-time equivalent 77 point.
Yeah, I mean, the point to note is how the 88 relates to the 77.
What you're saying, somewhere you'd like to see that
Where the shared
the
arrangements
15
are.
part-time,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, by
add confusion.
sort of loose
Yeah.
assumption, I could be wrong in this, but 15, if you did, if you said they were half-time, get you roughly,
yeah.
that you're 77, for instance. The point is you don't know how the 88 is broken down in terms of
Yeah,
one or less than one, so
that's right.
I get you.
And then just on the primary reason on exit, so that's I've gathered from exit interviews as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
We find on exit, as you'll see, there's a variety of reasons. But I think it's been mentioned before, the vast majority of people exiting the organisation say that they would recommend to others to work for us, which I take a lot of pride on.
Stephen, we don't focus a lot on the risk profile.
Yep.
Although I am interested in reading them each time we get them. They also tend to sit at moderate, and I think there is I think for us as a small council, there's always naturally some heightened risk around being a smaller council. And it feels like actually we're in quite a, and I think it's a good credit to you guys, in a reasonably stable position from a staffing perspective. I know we've talked, you've had to get a new finance manager in, and small council, that's always a big event, but you're also saying we're getting one or two of those hard to fill places done, which is good. But was there anything in terms of the risk profile that you'd want to draw out, or that perhaps SLT's focused on? You mentioned leave liability, I get that, but is anything else?
Not recently, Chair. We do go through these as a standing item.
Yep.
In every SLT meeting, not line by line through these risks, but people and culture risks that are in front of us as an executive team. There isn't anything that stands out to me that I'd bring to your attention at the moment.
Final chance for questions. Peter Benny, can we go to the resolution, please, which is that we receive the report? I'm going to move it. Do I have a second? Thanks, Collier. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes, it's carried. Let's get into the health and safety and emergency management update. Ian, looks like you're holding the fort here. Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a few people away at the moment, so I'm just representing other staff on these. Health and safety, we didn't have any flags for this table in health and safety. There's been some minor reports, but nothing significant. The only one that was significant was the threat that was made to a member of the customs services team by someone, but that's been dealt with by police, and we closed the loop with the individual concerned who's issued an apology and has been trespassed from the location. Otherwise, in health and safety, it was business as usual. In emergency management, we've been very busy. We've had, as you know, a series of events. The most recent one being the 2020 April event, and the feedback from Remo and external agencies involved in our stand-up of the EOC was that was an excellent response. We've been gradually learning our lessons from these events. We've been training our staff. We had 10 staff in the most recent EOC, 360 hours of South Wairarapa's staff time into the EOC. We were the largest contributor to that stand-up. And feedback was excellent, and perhaps more encouragingly in a way, feedback from the staff themselves who were involved in the response was that we really feel like we're getting on top of our portfolios and we understand what's happening and we're being effective. And that's great, because if we get a very big event, we need that kind of training and experience in place. So that's just something very positive that's come out of the recent severe weather events. Other than that, look, I'm happy to take questions on health and safety or EM. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I guess, again, reflecting on the smallness that we get 10 on, it certainly does our percentages right when I'm looking at that KPI of eligible staff that have been trained, and you can reasonably quickly move it up to 75. The important thing is it is at 75. So well done. That's great news. Colin?
Yes, thanks, very Chair. Stephen, just a question on the role of community boards in terms of civil defence, and we talk about staff training here. Are we adequately preparing our community boards in terms of training to ensure that their readiness in the event of emergency is done in a manner which is acceptable without imposing risk?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. It's a work in progress, Councillor. The health and safety, the emergency management officer responsible for this, as you know, we've only got one person, and they're very heavily involved in response. They're also our recovery manager. So after the response is finished, they're standing up the recovery and administering the recovery. We've recently made a structural change to split that person out, so they're now only concentrating on emergency management. Previously, Nigel, who was in this role, was doing emergency management and health and safety, which was very, very difficult. If there was a major weather event, health and safety really took a backseat while he was involved in that, and it wasn't working. So we've split that now. We've got a single person involved in emergency management. Part of that portfolio is to work with the community boards on the role and responsibility that we've allocated to those community boards. It'd be fair to say that that's still yeah, it is. But we've got our eye on it. It's on the work plan, and we're doing what we can, and we're bringing in Remo and others to help with that capability and collaborative model. Yes.
By exposure, I guess the reason I asked the question is the exposure to risk from ill-prepared or perhaps ill-trained members of community or community boards, for instance, assuming roles.
Chair, just in relation to that response and the question by the councillor, the the separation of those roles and the creation of that new lead advisor, health and safety, was that done through the disestablishment of another role?
It was done through a restructure that saw 2 roles disestablished and 3 new roles established, and they were and some of that was as a consequence of splitting the portfolios up in a more sensible way. Yes.
I can have a further question just in relation to emergency management. I note, Chair, that you trialled shift links for 12 hours. My experience, that doesn't often work and lead you into major issues, particularly when you're trying to get people refreshed in a major emergency. So I'd just be interested to what has been noted as an outcome there.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. If Nigel was here, he'd be giving you a much better answer than I can provide you. And we still are collating the feedback from teams, but the initial feedback that I've received is that you're right, Councillor, 12 and 12 is not the right format, and it stretches people too much. So we might not do that again, but I'll wait for the final findings.
Again, to change it becomes a factor of how many you've got capable of manning the roster.
Training resources.
Yeah.
Is the fund.
Yeah, and what happens is there's 10 staff go into the EOC and they spend 360 hours there. Then that means over that time all their BAU work is parked, stops, because we have to respect that boundary. Then when they come back, they're often taking toil because they've been in this constant churn of response, and so they're out of the system further. And then some of them are still involved in the recovery aspect of it. So we treat this responsibility really seriously, and we're dedicated to making our contribution. But it does have a significant impact on the running of the business.
So does that, this sounds, sorry.
Sorry, one quick question. When you have a 12 by 12 shift, it's actually, in reality, it's not that. It's a 14 by 14 hour shift because you have to do a handover. So it really stretches you from when you're doing long periods. The health and safety, so is that Nigel who's in charge directly now on that, or?
No. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so Nigel was, as I said, doing emergency management and health and safety, which wasn't really sustainable given the critical nature of both those things and how busy both of those areas are. We've now created a dedicated role that is emergency management, and Nigel is occupying that role. And we will be recruiting for a separate health and safety role, which is part-time.
So that's not the goal.
Yeah, it's only part-time, and that goes back to what Councillor Taylor was talking about earlier. Not all our roles are full FTEs. We sometimes use part-time or shared arrangements.
And will that role cross over into contracts, like for roading and things like that, where they advise the level of health and safety required for specific jobs?
Yes, it will, Councillor. It'll be connected to PCBUs like like Fultonhoven, but all the SLAs that we operate, and we'll collate reporting and monitor our relationships with those third parties.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the discussion. That's really helpful, Stephen. So again, we're simply receiving the report. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Chris, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Righty, we're up to the capital project summary. James, are you coming back to Aegis, please? That'd be great.
Yes, thank you. So I'll, as we do, take this report as read. And there's not too much to report on based on last time in terms of great progress is being made across the group and the different business units. Things are still on track as we reported last time. What I wanted to in particular it's mentioned in the report, but make note of, is the replacement of the Tauwhananika pipeline, quite a significant piece of work. I wanted to formally acknowledge the Capital Works, our Capital Works team, and also the contractors that made that happen. So that's eliminated the risk there that we've had around disruption to reliable, safe drinking water into Featherston. So a huge piece of work. While I get to sit here and talk about that, I wanted to acknowledge the people that were actually achieved that for us. So by and large, everything else is on track. You'll see a lot there that is set to be delivered within this financial year. There's been a few items that have been pushed out into a little bit further. Some of that's due to contractor availability, but also a lot of seasonality in terms of when work is done, such as painting buildings, things like that. And as you'll see, the majority is in train. So happy to take questions.
James, questions? Bear in mind, I think this goes, a lot of this we've done through the infrastructure committee. You'll be talking about, so this is, I'm looking here for the overall level of risk. James, at this stage, is there any sense that, I mean, these, you're reporting on existing projects, that the issue around fuel and fuel adjusted pricing, all that sort of stuff, is there a risk that they will affect these contracts we're undertaking at the moment?
We have seen that come through in BAU and in some projects as well. So it's being managed on a case by case basis, but I don't think significantly that we're then going to either stop or see cost blowouts, touch wood, in those projects. There are mechanisms in the various contracts we have to accommodate for increases such as we're seeing with fuel. And there may be decisions that we need to make depending on where fuel goes or stays or whether it comes back to, where we do want to pause some of these projects.
And I mean, the downstream consequences of the fuel crisis supplies where, some of the equipment we need to carry these out, there's no restriction in obtaining the material at this stage?
Not that we're seeing at the moment, no.
Okay. Brilliant. Any other questions, folk? No?
Go for it.
Go for it. No, you're welcome to.
James, I'd like to understand a number of the new signs were vandalised.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, have you managed to track down, find out anything about that?
That's happening in a number of locations. So with regard to the speed management review rollout, we've seen that happen down Underhill Road, and we saw it happen on Cape Palliser Road from the turn off to Lake Ferry right to the lighthouse. Every single sign that was put in was knocked over. So it's adding cost as vandalism does. And we're working to a point, which I can't recall whether it came out of this committee or the infrastructure, around how do we address that through comms and the like. So we're working on what can we do there that takes into account, burnouts on the road and graffiti and other things that we're seeing.
It's been the infrastructure committee, I think, James, are they?
Yeah. Into the
Yeah. But it does reflect the real
concerns about it.
Yeah, okay.
Second one was the Greytown Green Space, which is, we've got 2 million against.
Yes.
In a red status.
Yep.
When will that be brought back for a further decision or for us to be done?
That's something that we need to do sooner rather than later. I think as we've talked about there, the key rub around that is that it's allocated for purchase of land. So if we're not talking about purchase of land, and Charlie could probably back up there, then we need to potentially reconsult on that. So that would need to come back through infrastructure.
Does it say purchase of land? My understanding is it's a loose term of the wording of Wellington. Does that be purchase of land?
In the LT, well, Charlie, be able to take over from there.
So for starters, it's capital project, so that does lend itself into purchase of or building of assets and land, that sort of thing.
Right.
The solution that was consulted on in the 2131 LTP we're talking here was purchase of green space in Greytown, as in purchase of land. The reason that's taken so long is availability of land. the aim would be then to consult maybe with the community on if there is no land available, what is the option? So that will be developed as part of the LTP.
So there's some say on this way for the public school, I think. I think the key learning out of here is around how we're describing these LTP projects. If we, as we've talked about, the key principle here is about increasing capacity. It's worded as such, then we could be talking about development of land or purchase of land. But because we've said explicitly purchase of land, to move away from that requires consultation, unfortunately.
Further questions?
Carbon development and public school, is that right?
Yep. On the Martin for a wastewater treatment plant, when was the consent go up? That,
Consent.
the resource consent.
Behind. That's what I mean.
Janice?
Yes. Yep, that is none. Okay, thank you. And then just finally, I see walkway, cycleway improvement, 112,000 for the shared path along Hungara and Rotunga roads, just out here.
Correct.
I hadn't picked this up before, but we've got separate Martinborough process going on, which we need to feed that into.
Absolutely. So it's been,
There are similar planning around that.
yeah, we're connecting up the manager that's overseeing that with the Marg group as well. Yep. And that, coming back to the earlier point about fuel, that's one there that we would need to consider, given the product that's used and the machinery as well. Do we delay it? Do we not? How much are we actually getting for our budget?
Chris. I'm sort of not aware of what designates a project onto the dashboard with risk, how that's analysed. But I do know that Lake Ferry has got some drainage issues behind the hill from that Peter's been working on. I was just wondering whether that should be in here or not.
It's not a capital project.
It's apparently there's a drain going in behind. The reason I bring it up is because you've got drainage solution here in the Martinborough campground. So I figured that, well, that's kind of a similar thing with it. But it certainly does come with risk because it could be, you know, the people are claiming it could be effluent mixed with groundwater running into the back of their properties at Lake Ferry. So just wondering whether it should be on the project.
I'll tell you what, why don't you turn it up outside the meeting with James?
Yeah.
It sounds like you got a particular complaint there, which would be.
It's been ongoing.
Yeah, but I wanted to just, we don't have it here, I think is what I'm saying, Chris. So
Yeah, sure.
there may be a bit of criteria, the explanation that can happen here as well. Should be great. Right, anything else? That's good. Thank you for that. So we need to receive and note the information. Do I have a mover and a second, please? Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Collier. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Righty, that gets us, I think, to the resolution to exclude the public. We have a couple of items, the minutes and with legal update. And I think we just agreed we'll have a very short addition files around to raise a matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty informal. I think we've got time to do it. So the motion is to move into PX, which I will formally move. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Colin. Is there any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, it's carried. Thank you.